That's just for you, Greg. Man. "30 seconds." "15. 5.
Hey, how to sing blues, baby. Shot glass in your hand.
Yes, y'all. It is DCTF Live, your favorite internet show. It's a fun day. It's Friday. It's Off Topic Friday. I'm feeling better. I don't want to just, die, which is great.
Off Topic Friday is good for that.
Marked improvement over yesterday.
I don't know about you, I have grown to look more forward to Friday, if
Yeah.
one could say that, just because of Off Topic Friday.
It is Off Topic Friday. If you've got a question that you want us to answer, your stupid question, we'd be happy to answer it. Tweet it to us at DCTF. And in just a moment, we're going to be joined by Sam Khan Jr. of ESPN.com, who wrote a great article about recruiting in the state of Texas and kind of the shifting recruiting landscape. Interested in picking his brain on that. I've been thinking a lot today, Max, about legacy. And not because I'm planning on dying, but a legacy is a fickle thing. I'll tell you why I was thinking about it, is because of the death of Harper Lee. Harper Lee, of course, the author of arguably the greatest American novel, To Kill a Mockingbird. And she died today.
You're taking this
89.
harder than...
Well,
you've caught me off guard.
Yeah, but I'm a book guy. You know that. I'm a reader.
I like books.
I'm a reader.
I read books.
I'm a reader, and so it struck me when this is going to be the whitest thing I've ever said.
Well,
I was on my way back from bringing my mom coffee and listening to NPR in the car on the way here to do a football radio show, internet show rather.
Internet show. intranet.
when I heard the news, and it just struck me because I think that's the first book that a lot of people fell in love with, and the first time that anybody's read a book and gone, wow, that struck you on a deeper level than that was fun, And
So Larry Flint's autobiography wasn't your first favorite.
No. And
That's
so
surprising.
and so I was thinking about that, but her legacy is an interesting one. Obviously, the top line of her obituary is To Kill a Mockingbird.
Yes.
But remember, last year she put out another book.
That was a bit dicey.
Her first book in 50 years, and it was met with kind of. I mean, there were people who really didn't like it because of what she did to Atticus Finch.
Right.
But there were people who really didn't like it, and so it's interesting that she had this legacy, and that if she never would have put out that book, Go Set a Watchman, it would have been that her legacy was set. We know what she is. She is the greatest one-hit wonder in literary history.
Sure.
Now you have to consider the sum of her career, and maybe the sum of her career is different. And I think a lot about what's going on with Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning is this squeaky clean guy who's got this great reputation. He's a winner. Everybody likes him.
Yeah.
And now, with these allegations that are just surfacing up again from Tennessee, what's his legacy? I think that a legacy is a fickle thing, something that you work very hard to build, but then you've got to maintain it. It has a maintenance. So I've just been thinking about that. I do a lot of thinking.
It's been a heavy week for you, man.
I have. I don't know.
I
don't know. It's weird. I don't know. That was the first thing I thought of when I heard about Harper Lee's death.
Sure.
Was how is she going to be remembered?
It's a tricky one.
Because if you take the sum of her career, she only wrote 2 books. There are people who have written many, 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 many more. She is she is on the low end of the prolific scale. She's written 2 more books than I have.
Yeah.
But at the same time, one of those books is one of the greatest books ever written.
Sure.
So, I don't know. It's an interesting case. We are DCTF Live. We are here every weekday at noon on TexasFootball.com. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. It's shooting up the iTunes charts.
Sometimes.
Often.
Sometimes not.
Occasionally.
Yeah.
So go ahead and just search DCTF Live podcast. Follow us on Twitter at DCTF. Like us Facebook, facebook.com/Dave Campbell's, Instagram.com/Dave Campbell's, TexasFootball.com for all your football stuff. A little bit later in a moment, we're going to be joined. Oh, by the way, if you have another off-topic Friday question, if you have one you want to squeeze in here at the buzzer, this is probably the last moment you can tweet it to us. So tweet it to us at DCTF, and we'll try to answer your questions here on Off-Topic Friday. So there's a great piece up on ESPN.com right now, written by Sam Kahn Jr., formerly of the Houston Chronicle, now of ESPN.com. And it's the headline is how the Lone Star State. Well, it's actually an error in the headline. How the Lone Star State's recruiting has changed, and we've talked a little bit about it here on the show about how the landscape of football in Texas has shifted. In a lot of respects, it used to be, here's Texas, and then a gap, and then everyone else. Now, I think that gap is a little overstated. I think that there have been, especially Texas A&M, have always recruited well, and that the gap between what Texas and A&M has been able to do, I think that gap was a little bit overstated. But the point is that it's not wrong that it used to be Texas and then everybody else. And that is not the way it is now. Now there's a lot more parity, I think, in recruiting across the Lone Star State. And I highly recommend the story written by Sam Kahn Jr., who joins us now on the phone to talk about it. Sam, thanks for your time. Appreciate you hopping on with us.
No problem. Thanks for having me. How are you?
Doing great. So you write this story about the changing landscape of recruiting in the state of Texas. And when you were talking to a lot of different people, including head coaches, coordinators all across the state, was the overall consensus that things have significantly changed here in the last 3-4 years?
Without question. And I think the biggest consensus I heard from talking to coaches was A&M's move to the SEC was probably the biggest reason for the change because of what it has done in allowing schools from the SEC West in particular access to the state or better access to the state. It's not that they didn't recruit it before, but now with the guaranteed game every 2 years in the state of Texas, that's an additional selling point for Ole Miss, Mississippi State. schools like that. I mean, Alabama's going to recruit on a national level anyway, so that hasn't changed. But even with Bama, you've seen them come in and take the top defensive back recruit in the state of Texas the last few classes. So I think that's been the biggest reason. But there's no doubt it's changed because 10 years ago, like we said, it was a dominant Texas. It was their state. It was Longhorn State, and since then it is diversified. And really, like you said, in the last 5 years, because of Baylor's rise to the top of the Big 12, TCU's rise, now Houston's a factor. And like I said, A&M, had a couple of seasons where they led the state in recruiting, and that opened the doors for the rest of the conference. So it has changed quite a bit when you talk to people, and it's fascinating because I think what it has made it is more competitive than we've ever seen it.
Do you think that Texas A&M, obviously they've benefited from the move, but do you think that the move was better for the other teams in the SEC maybe than it was for Texas A&M?
It certainly seems like right now it's better for Ole Miss because you look at the top 10 recruits in the state of Texas, at least according to our ranking, and A&M didn't sign one of them, and Ole Miss signed two, Greg Little and Deontay Anderson. And those are two guys that A&M would have loved to have. Of course, Little was committed to A&M for a little while, and then Anderson was someone they heavily pursued in the process, but they ended up getting neither of them, and they were shut out of the top 10 of the state. The highest ranked kid they got in our rankings was Justin Matabuke out of McKinney. So that's not to say that Texas A&M is doing well. They still are, but I think it has hurt them, and it has helped, like you said, the other schools in that conference, particularly in the SEC West. I don't think you see the SEC East schools in here as often. I mean, Mizzou does recruit. Texas always has under Gary Pinkel. It'll be interesting to see if they do that under Barry Odom. Florida, is going to spot recruit here and there. They landed Tyree Cleveland, but you're not going to see them a lot. Georgia, you're not going to see a lot. But those SEC West programs you will see, and you've seen Mississippi State in here, you've seen Ole Miss, you've seen Auburn come into the area. Arkansas, of course, for its proximity, will typically recruit, and LSU always has. But I think it has definitely helped the other schools in that division.
Of course, you mentioned the big bully on the block used to be Texas. That it used to be, you said it used to be a Longhorn State. It no longer is. What is the biggest factor you think that went into Texas, as you put it, coming back to the pack?
I think just the lack of success in the last 5-6 years. I mean, winning is the bottom line here, and they had 9 straight seasons of 10-plus wins, and they've now gone 6 straight seasons without reaching that mark. I think they've got to get back to winning double-digit games on a perennial basis and contending for championships. I mean, I remember when they were at their height under Mac Brown, they were contending for Big 12 titles, contending for national championships. They were near the top of the rankings. That hasn't been in the cards for them in recent years, and that's definitely hurt them. And kids want to win. I mean, the facilities are great, the school and, the atmosphere, the location, those are all great things. But I think at the end of the day, most kids want to play and they want to win, and that's one big thing. That's what makes the way Charlie Strong finished off this class so impressive, because they were sitting behind Baylor, TCU, Houston, A&M in the recruiting rankings. And, of course, this was strategic on Charlie's part to kind of lay in the weeds a little bit and try and close out strong with picking up a lot of late commitments rather than getting early commitments, which is a total departure from what it was 10 years ago when Mac Brown was getting all the early commits. And it worked out beautifully. You've got to give Strong and his staff a lot of credit for the way they were able to recruit off of a 5-7 season, because I think now they're starting to build back the talent base that they need to get those kind of double-digit win seasons.
We're talking to Sam Kahn of ESPN.com here on DCTF Live. Involve the conversation at hashtag DCTF Live. 2 other schools that have really changed the recruiting landscape in the state, TCU and Baylor, kind of for different reasons. TCU, with the move from the Mountain West to the Big 12, obviously had a big implication. And then Baylor, kind of going from perennial also-ran to perennial power, has shot up the recruiting rankings. For you, how much has their rise changed how things really operate in the state?
Big time, because what has changed that I can see is that it's pushed out Oklahoma and Oklahoma State to some extent. You saw this year both Oklahoma and Oklahoma State sign fewer Texans than they have in the last 10 years. And the reason is because Baylor and TCU is gobbling them all up. Oklahoma and Oklahoma State were able to beat out Baylor and TCU for those Dallas-Fort Worth or North Texas area recruits with regularity, because Baylor was not that good 10 years ago, and for TCU's sake, they weren't in a power conference. So Oklahoma and Oklahoma State had that as a carrot to sell to recruits. Now, like you said, TCU is in the Big 12, so now they're on an even playing field. Baylor has now, they've won a couple conference championships. Robert Griffin III winning the Heisman was a huge boon for their recruiting. McLean Stadium being built. TCU has had, renovations at their stadium as well. So those things all put them on an even playing field with Oklahoma and Oklahoma State. So now it's a lot easier for them to sell the North Texas recruits on staying close to home and being able to win and compete for a Big 12 championship. That's something you couldn't sell them 10 years ago because TCU wasn't in the conference and Baylor wasn't in the conversation. So, now they can actually stay close to home and they can go to one of those schools and win a Big 12 title and possibly go to the playoff, which that's just – if we would have said that 10 years ago, I think we would all have been – we would not have believed that would have been possible. But that's a testament to how fast things have changed. The job that Art Briles has done building Baylor from where it was and the job that Gary Patterson has done, I mean, he's been at his post longer than any other power conference head coach in the state, since 2000, and I think that stability says something for TCU. And I think they were already winning wherever they were, whether it was Conference USA, the WAC, the Mountain West, and now they're just continuing to do that at the Big 12 level.
When I look across the state, the one thing I'm struck by is the diversity in coaching, and especially a lot of newer, exciting young coaches coming in. Guys like Cliff Kingsbury, Tom Herman, what he's doing at Houston, Chad Morris, his work at SMU, to a lesser extent, maybe a step below that. Everett Withers at Texas State, Seth Luttrell, Frank Wilson, the trio of new coaches in the state of Texas. Do you get the feeling that the way that the landscape is right now in recruiting is not going to stay the same and that's going to continue to shift over the next couple of years?
A little bit. I think for right now, I think it's going to sit like we see it right now, where it's going to be a free-for-all just because, the current crop of coaches we have, especially within the power conference schools and even Houston in the conversation, you have coaches that have deep Texas ties. Cliff Kingsbury, Texas high school product, son of a Texas high school football coach. Chad Morris, former Texas high school football coach. Art Briles, Texas high school football coach. Tom Herman, not in that category, but has spent his entire career recruiting the state of Texas. Was stopped at Sam Houston State, Rice, Texas State, and now is at Houston. So he ties to Texas there. Gary Patterson has been in his post, like you said, since 2000. So these are all guys who have relationships throughout the state. And then you see the way they hire assistants. You see Tom Herman hires Corby Meekins. You see Cliff Kingsbury hired Mike Jackson. Of course, now he's at Bowling Green. He's made high school coaches hires to his staff. Chad Morris has hired Claude Mathis. You see those kind of hires going on, and that makes it, I think, it gives those programs more of a chance to fight for talent because they're bringing in guys with instant relationships that don't have to spend time, a coach like an Everett Withers, for instance, he's going to have to build a lot of bridges in the state in relationships with the coaches in the state of Texas. Frank Wilson, most of his background in Louisiana, again, a guy who's going to have to build some relationships in the state of Texas. I think with the current power coaching structure we have right now, I think you're going to see it, kind of stay the way it is for the next cycle or two. But as coaches change, I think you see it continue to shift. And again, wins and losses play a factor in that. If Texas starts to rise, then I think you see them start to win a little bit more. If A&M, if they don't have a better season, then they're going to start, continue to stumble down the rankings if they have the last 2 years. All these things are all factors. I think it does continue to evolve and shift, but I think not necessarily immediately. I think right now the landscape as we see it is going to kind of stay that way for at least the next cycle.
Aside from being a college football reporter, Sam Kahn is known as America's best-dressed sports writer.
This is true.
And Sam, if you could give our audience one bit of advice, we're going to assume, talking to the males in the audience. If you give us one piece of fashion advice, what would it be?
Make sure your shoes look good.
Okay.
That matters. I think a lot of people forget that part. And I, for a long time, was one of those guys that the shoes were an afterthought. Yeah. Your shoe game has to be on point. I think people look at the whole thing, and if you have a really nice suit and you have the pocket square and the tie and even a hat or something like that, and your shoes look ratty, then it ruins the whole thing. It absolutely ruins the whole thing.
That's a great point. He is Sam Kahn, Jr. of ESPN.com. Follow him on Twitter at SKHANJR. Sam, appreciate your time, bud, and enjoy your weekend.
Hey, no problem. Thanks for having me. Y'all too.
There he goes. Sam Kahn Jr. of ESPN.com, America's best-dressed sports writer. The shoe thing's interesting. But I think that he's right that if you look at what Ole Miss has done in recent years, they've come in and really honestly, they've taken a lot of the guys that A&M has gotten recently. A&M and Texas. Those top-tier guys, they've come in. Those teams from the SEC West have come in and gotten those guys. Now, they've always come in and had a presence. Yeah. But I think that he's exactly right. That it kind of opened the floodgates that, yes, moving to the SEC was a good thing for A&M recruiting-wise. But beyond that, it was also a good thing for everyone else recruiting-wise because they were able to come into the talent-rich area of Texas and say, okay, we're going to come and try to pluck a couple of these great kids out of here, and they've done so. So appreciate Sam Kahn Jr. of ESPN.com hopping on with us. We are DCTF Live. We are here every weekday at noon on TexasFootball.com. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. Follow us on Twitter at DCTF. Like us on Facebook, Facebook.com/Dave Campbell's. Follow us on Instagram, Instagram.com/Dave Campbell's. And, of course, see us at TexasFootball.com. So we are now in the midst of Off Topic Friday. It's your favorite.
Baby.
It's your favorite time of the week.
We do need to introduce Off Topic Friday music.
Yeah, we do. If you are a local band in the state of Texas and you want to write us an Off Topic Friday theme, Max.Thompson at HoneyfieldMarketing.com.
That's right, yeah. Bug me, not Greg.
Yes, don't bug me. I don't necessarily want to. So,
Greg doesn't want to be bugged.
It's Off Topic Friday. Every Friday we ask you to submit your questions, football or not, to us, and we will let you know what we think.
Sure.
So, let's start with a question from our own Mike Craven, DCTF contributor, who writes, "You can only watch one classification of football for the rest of your life. Which A do you choose and why?" He says he'd go 4A.
This is tough.
So
this is really tough.
Yeah, it is. I think I would go one step below 4A. I think I'd go to 3A. That would be my pick because for me, if you're watching Texas high school football, you want a little bit of the small school feel.
Sure.
I think as great as 6A and 5A are, to me, it's almost too crisp. It's almost too good. There's too much depth there. Right. I like the idea that you have to play with what you've got. And so I think that you'd want something smaller in scale. But I think 3A has that right amount of polish, that right amount of depth, that right amount of quality there, that top to bottom. I think 3A football is the most entertaining in the state. That would be my pick. I don't think you can go wrong. And in fact, you want to know what I think my second pick would be?
Okay.
I think it'd be 1A.
You want to go?
I think I'd go 6-man.
Basketball on grass.
I think I'd go 6-man would be my second choice.
Okay.
But I would go 3A, and then if 3A is not available, I would take 1A.
So, oddly, we've arrived at the same conclusion, but for different reasons.
Interesting.
3A football, yes.
All right.
I like all of your reasons. They only reinforce mine, which is the diversity in the game plans, right? So the difference, I thought about 4A because I get what Mike's getting at, and I think part of it is because Mike spends so much time watching 4A teams in East Texas, which honestly gives you a lot of the things that you were using as reasons for 3A. But I'll take 3A one step further in that I could go to plenty of games, see the wing T, and still see a wide open spread offense in 3A.
That's a great point.
That's what I'm getting at because I almost went with 4A, and then I realized there just wouldn't be enough one-trick pony kind of offenses, systems that you don't see at a higher level.
That's interesting.
So I think 3A is my answer too, especially now that Canadian is in 3A.
Well, the diversity of offenses is an interesting point because you go to at 6A and 5A, 85% of teams are running the same offense.
Yep.
They're running some version of the spread.
Yes.
There are tweaks here and there, but you're right. You are not seeing the list of teams that run the wing T or the slot T or the veer in 6A and 5A is a very short list.
Yes.
If you want that diversity of offense and that kind of craziness of offense, then I think you're right. I think that you got to go to the smaller school ranks, and I think 3A both of our choices. That's interesting. But yeah, I think 1A is a dark horse in this one because I know that it's different, and I know that it's a different sport, but at the same time, it's also a very fun sport. So that's first question. Secondly, this question came from I don't remember who this came from.
Which one?
What the second one? The second one. Oh, it was our friend Avi from Sports Day HS. At Sports Day HS asks, "What is the best helmet design in the state?" He suggests Shiner. Shiner, great helmets.
Now here's
great helmets.
Here's what I'll say before you continue. Shiner is a very popular pick. People think, like, lots of Texas high school football writers, fans are like, "Oh, Shiner. Shiner's the obvious answer." It's not.
I'll give you. I've got two others that I would nominate as the best. I think two that you wouldn't think of. Okay, first of all, Dickinson. Okay, Dickinson has kind of the fade where it's like blue around here, but then white. They got the D on there.
And they got the two
love
lines.
Dickinson's helmets.
Yeah.
And if you want a super deep, dark secret of one of the best helmets in Texas, go look at the Thompson Bears. Google it right now. Google Thompson football.
Okay.
So they're the Bears, right? And there are 500 million bears in the state. Okay? So to do a helmet that is interesting and different for a team that is the Bears, you have to come up with something unique. And they did. It's the T, okay?
Yep.
It's like a block T
Yep.
that then says Bears down the column of the T, and then
A swipe.
they add the bear swipe.
Yep.
I think that is awesome. I love Timpson's uniform.
I think I get what you're.
You know what I'm saying?
The Bears down the T kind of makes it.
Because if you're the Bears and you're just like, here's a bear, or you're the Bears, it's like, here's a B, you know, or or just a T, then there's nothing unique about that.
I get you.
They have taken something. They've taken something that is ultimately also they got the stripes down here, like Michigan, which is great. They have taken something that is kind of a dime a dozen. Okay, Bears, black and gold, just kind of a dime a dozen, and they have made it unique. And that is something I've always liked about Timpson's helmets. I'm gonna go Timpson.
Okay.
Timpson. If you want to go, it's an East Texas school. You want to go see it. Anyway, that's my pick. Do you have one?
I thought do you have three?
Shiner was my third one. I like Shiner.
Okay, Shiner's still in there. Okay.
Shiner's still in it. I like Shiners. I think it's one of the things that we have gone so crazy with it that where it's like, I think we've overrated it now at this point.
Okay. I think that's fair. Okay, my three.
Yeah. Okay.
It seems obvious to me, but it's overlooked way too easily. Permian's
pretty
iconic.
classic.
Right, and the colors, it's crisp. It is what it is. You don't need anything else. You know exactly what it is the minute you see it.
Yeah.
I don't. It's perfect. If they ever change it, I would lose.
No,
my
it's
mind.
it's classic. It's kind of like what we were talking about with Franklin.
Right.
You know, like Franklin's uniforms, their whole kit is just so good, so clean, crisp. It's great.
2, Longview, Rockin' L. I love the colors. I love the scheme. And I will say, anytime they make minor adjustments for the Centennial or anything like that, they are awesome.
Yeah.
The white L with the 100 was awesome when they did the Centennial celebration. The matte look makes it look even cooler. Huge. But number one for me, not close, the Judson Rockets.
Yeah.
The red and gray, baby, and that J, there's no other J like
it. It's classic.
There's nothing like it.
And you went an interesting route with me with that you went to some of the more iconic, classic looks.
Yeah.
And you know what? Here's the thing. They're iconic and classic because they're great. Yeah. Like, there's a reason that Texas A&M hasn't changed their helmet in a million years because it's great.
Yeah.
You know, there's a reason, same with Texas, same with, Tech to a certain extent. Yeah. They haven't tricked up their logo because it's great.
Yeah.
So I think you're right. That's we had different
I like the choices though.
Different kind of schools of thought there.
Right.
Next up on Off Topic Friday, question from Tanner Wilson I want to give him credit.
Tanner Wilson 9?
Is that right? Yeah, that sounds about
right. At
Tanman 9. There we go. Thank you. Could European-style standing room terraces ever work at Texas high school stadiums? If you are unfamiliar with this is a soccer thing, a football thing over there in Europe, as well as I think across the world. This is pretty standard. Is that there aren't seats, and all you do is you buy a ticket to a section, and then you get to stand in that section for the game. That is the way that it works. There are no seats. Could European standing room only terraces ever work at Texas high school stadiums? The answer is no.
Really?
The answer is
You're going strong, full stop, no.
The answer is no.
Why?
We are too lazy. We don't want to stand for an entire game.
I wasn't sure. I thought you were like, oh, it's a safety thing.
No, we're just too lazy.
We're just
we
too
would
lazy.
never tolerate being able to stand, because here's the thing. You've got to stand the whole game. Like, it's not like you can sit down at halftime, at intermission, or whatever. You can't sit down for the band.
Yes.
Which I think is something everybody wants to do. They want to sit in for the band or at halftime.
Right.
You can't do that. And
No.
we as Americans, that is just how we're wired. We are too lazy. We can't do standing room only.
I can't argue with this logic.
Okay, that's
It's
my
a solid point.
argument. What were you going to
Well, it's funny. I think it'd be fun to try. I don't think the safety issues would be quite as intense as they are in soccer, just because there isn't a buildup with football the way there is with soccer, right? Touchdowns happen. Not everyone's going to rush to the fence. I think it's okay. I think it'd be fun, and I think what would be interesting to find out is which student sections really made it work.
Yeah. Now,
Right.
and here's the thing: is that a lot of student sections already stand. Basically, they are de facto
They're basically standing
rooms.
the whole time.
Yeah.
Anyway, they're doing the roller coaster stuff. I mean,
They basically are. But I'm saying that if you want to do that just for the student section, yeah, that might work.
Yeah.
But the alumni and the parents, they're not standing for an entire game. They're not going to do it. And that's not a knock on. That's just a knock on Americans.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, we don't do that. We don't stand. We want to sit at games. There's a reason that there are seats. If it would work, they could cram more people into it.
Yes.
And the people who run sports the way they are would absolutely do it. It would have been done by now if they could have, but they know that people aren't going to stand the entire game. That's why standing room only is always the last ticket sold.
This is a fair point.
One more question.
Oh, we're sneaking one in.
We're
at
going to
the
sneak
buzzer.
one in. This is from at YellMK.
Oh, okay.
He asks, if I'm still upset that you put Texas and A&M on your DCTF cover last year, is there a hotline where I can air my grievances?
Well,
So this is he brings up an interesting point, that, we caught, every time we put out the summer edition of Dave Campbell's Texas Football, it's always split, because there's always people who love it and they think it's the best thing we've ever done, and there's always people who hate it and they think that it's the end of the magazine and what the hell are you doing, Tepper?
right.
Okay. I hear it, but
I mean, what the hell are you doing, Tepper? That's every day.
But I'm immune to it.
Sure.
I'm immune to that kind of criticism because I know we make a thoughtful choice, and I am always comfortable. I've never put out a cover since I've been here at Dave Campbell's Texas Football that I'm like, ooh, I don't know if that's the right choice. Every time it's been the right choice, in my opinion. Now, maybe that's just a self-fulfilling, confidence.
Sure.
So, but there are people who don't like this cover behind me from Roberto
Judging
Parada.
by our friend's avatar,
Oh, he's a TCU fan.
he's TCU.
He's a TCU fan. And that was who we heard the most from, was TCU fans, Baylor fans,
Right.
A&M fans, a few
Yes.
others. But overall, if you do have a problem with it, stick it? Is that what I'm looking for? Is that... I can't remember if that's what I wrote.
You're not going to win any fans with that one, but okay.
Look, guys, we make it every year. It's the toughest decision we have to make every year, is who's going to be on the cover of Dave Campbell's Texas Football. We know we know we're not going to make everybody happy. That's just something we do. So, if you don't like it, I'm sorry, but buy it again next year, and maybe we'll put your team on the cover. How about
Sure.
that? All right?
Yeah, why not?
So that is going to do it for DCTF Live. Thank you for sending in your off-topic Friday questions, and thank you to Sam Conn of ESPN.com for joining us. Follow us on Twitter at DCTF. Like us on Facebook, Facebook.com/Dave Campbell's. Follow us on Instagram, Instagram.com/Dave Campbell's. And, of course, see us at TexasFootball.com. Vince Young, please come get your Player of the Year trophy. And we will see you Monday on DCTF Live.